Over the past few months, we've journeyed across China and brought you along for every step through our weekly travelogue series. Our itinerary began in Hong Kong and took us through 9 incredible cities: Changsha, the misty peaks of Zhangjiajie, the buzzing cityscape of Chongqing, the panda-filled parks of Chengdu, the ancient marvels of Xi'an, onward to Beijing, then Hangzhou, and finally into the neon-lit skyline of Shanghai. We traveled more than 3,300 miles completely by high-speed rail and gained a much clearer understanding of what it's really like to explore China today, especially as independent travelers who don't speak the language. In today's video, we're shifting gears from storytelling to strategy. I'll walk you through the practical travel tips we picked up along the way in hopes that they help you navigate the country more smoothly. Whether it's your first time in China or you've been away for years, we hope this guide gives you the tools and confidence to explore it on your own terms. So let's go. Before I jump in, I want to mention something important. Over the past 9 weeks, we've been sharing our China Travelogue series, highlighting not just the destinations, but also the logistics of how we got around. So if you're heading to China and feel unsure about how to apply the tips we're sharing today, we highly recommend watching the series. You'll see us navigating subways, purchasing tickets, boarding trains, and managing all kinds of real-time travel situations. We've left a link to the full playlist below. It's fun, quirky, and packed with useful information. Now let's zoom out for the big picture. This was actually our second time to China. Our first time was over a decade ago when we visited with our college-aged daughters. It was memorable, but honestly, we didn't think we'd be rushing back. Fast forward to today, and we've completely changed our minds. What we found this time was a country that's dramatically more modern, cleaner, far more efficient, and easier to navigate as foreign travelers. In fact, China has gone from one of our least favorite destinations to one of our absolute favorites. We're already looking forward to returning. If you're looking for a destination that's less familiar than Europe, but more orderly than Vietnam, China might be the perfect fit. Before you go, you'll need a visa to enter China. Citizens of the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, and several other countries must apply in advance through a Chinese embassy or consulate. In the United States, the embassy or consulate you apply through depends on your state of residence. We chose to use a service called Visa Hero, and we're glad we did. It made the process much simpler. For about $200 per person plus the $140 Chinese government fee, we each received a 10-year multi-entry visa. Our passports were returned within about 2 weeks. If you prefer, you can apply in person at an embassy or consulate, but keep in mind that there are only a few across the country. If there isn't one near you, using a service like Visa Hero is absolutely worth the time and travel saved. If you do it yourself, remember you'll need to make a second trip to pick up your passport when it's ready. A couple of important notes. Get the 10-year visa. It costs the same as the shorter one, and it gives you flexibility for future trips without having to reapply. Now, if your passport expires before the visa does, just carry both your old and your new passports when you travel. Your visa will still be valid. Now, there are transit visas available for shorter stays in certain cities, but these are limited and not guaranteed. While you can apply for a single entry visa, we strongly recommend you go straight for the 10-year version. The cost is the same, and it saves you the trouble down the road. It's worth noting that China is one of the more expensive visa destinations for U.S. citizens. Now, all in all, we paid about $340 per person just to get in. But once you're in, you can return as often as you like for the next 10 years without paying another visa fee. When entering China, be prepared to show the details of your accommodations. Immigration officers may ask for the address of your hotel or lodging, so it's a good idea to have it either saved on your phone or printed, preferably in Chinese. We were also asked about our exit plans, so make sure you have proof of your return or your onward travel handy. We entered the country by train from Hong Kong using Kowloon West Station, and the customs experience was smooth and professional. Aside from a minor hiccup with my fingerprint scanner, thanks to some faint fingerprints, the process was simple and efficient. We weren't asked any invasive questions, and our U.S. citizenship wasn't an issue. In fact, it was just as easy, if not easier, than entering many other countries we've visited. The main difference? The cost of the visa. But as for immigration itself, the process was straightforward. The officers spoke English, and the entire experience was stress-free. We're often asked if we felt safe traveling in China, and the answer is a resounding yes. In fact, China felt like one of the safest countries we've ever visited. Petty crime seemed nearly non-existent, and we felt comfortable walking around, even at night, in every city we explored. One noticeable difference is the widespread use of security cameras. In some areas, it's extensive. At one intersection in Hangzhou, we counted more than 50 cameras. While that level of surveillance might feel a bit intense to some, we actually found it reassuring. As travelers, knowing that there's an added layer of security made us feel more at ease. There are places in the world where we wish someone had eyes on us, so in this case, we saw it as a positive. Now for the elephant in the room. How did we feel traveling as Americans in a country that doesn't always align politically with our own? It's a fair question and something we absolutely considered before going. Yes, tensions between the U.S. and China make headlines, but on the ground, we never felt any hostility, quite the opposite. The Chinese people we encountered were kind, respectful, and curious. No one asked us uncomfortable questions. No officials singled us out. No one treated us with suspicion or judgment. We were never approached about politics, and we never felt the need to defend ourselves or explain our nationality. Instead, we experienced warmth, helpfulness, and genuine hospitality. We were also careful to respect the local laws and customs, something we believe is important no matter where you travel. In short, we felt completely safe in China, both as travelers and as Americans. Pollution is a common concern for travelers in China, and it's one we experienced firsthand during our first trip over a decade ago. Back then, the smog in Beijing was so thick we couldn't see more than a few blocks ahead. But this time around, we were shocked in a good way. Not only could we clearly see the mountains around the city, but the overall air quality felt dramatically better. Some cities like Xi'an and Shanghai still had a slight haze at times, but it was nothing like what we had seen before. One major reason? Electric vehicles. We estimated that nearly half of the cars on the road were electric. Combined with visible efforts to reduce emissions and improve infrastructure, it's clear that China is making significant progress. Big strides are being made, and it shows. Timing is everything when it comes to traveling in China. We visited in the spring, March and April, which falls into the shoulder season, and we found it to be ideal. The weather was cool and comfortable, cherry blossoms were in bloom, the crowds were noticeably smaller than in peak summer months. Spring and fall, especially September and October, are considered the best times to visit, offering mild temperatures and a more relaxed atmosphere. On the flip side, summer can be brutally hot and humid, especially in inland cities like Xi'an and Chongqing. August, in particular, is crowded and overwhelming and just plain sweltering. The winter brings cold temperatures in the north, but it can be a great time to explore China's southern regions. One key tip: avoid traveling during China's major holidays. Golden Week, early in October, and Chinese New Year, which falls in January or February, depending on the lunar calendar, are times when the entire country is on the move. Transportation gets packed, accommodations fill quickly, and crowds are everywhere. If you can plan around those weeks, your trip will be far smoother and much more enjoyable. Here's one of our biggest and most important tips for traveling in China. Always carry your original passport with you. It's not just for airport arrivals. It functions as your all-access pass through the country. Whether you're buying train tickets, entering museums, visiting parks, or checking into hotels, your passport is required for both identification and verification. In many cases, your passport is literally your ticket. At train stations and major attractions, there's often no paper ticket issued. You simply scan your passport for entry. This is a government-regulated process tied to national security and guest registration, so copies or digital photos won't work. Most places will require you to physically present the original document. At first, we found this a bit confusing, especially when we didn't receive physical tickets at museums or on trains. But once we understood the system, we realized it actually made things easier. Just remember to keep your passport handy at all times, and you'll avoid unnecessary complications. Your phone is everything in China. Translation, train tickets, maps, ride-hailing payments. You will use your phone constantly, so come prepared. Carry a backup power bank to keep your phone charged throughout the day. Make sure your phone supports eSIM or global roaming. Don't rely on old tech. This is one of our pet peeves, people handing us outdated phones to take pictures. If you splurged on a trip to China, bring a phone that matches the moment. Modern smartphones take stunning photos. You don't need a DSLR, but you do need a phone that performs well. This is not a place where you can wing it without data. Plan ahead, stay charged, and stay connected. You'll thank yourself later. In China, nearly all transactions, whether it's museum tickets, fruit from a sidewalk vendor, or dinner at a restaurant, are handled through Alipay or WeChat Pay. These two mobile payment platforms are absolutely essential, and carrying cash is largely unnecessary. In fact, cash isn't accepted in most places, even by street vendors. The only time we ran into trouble was at one subway station in Chongqing that wouldn't accept either our payment apps. And thankfully, our son had a few yuan on hand. Still, it's smart to carry a small amount of local currency just in case, but don't expect to rely on it. One quirk of the system is that sometimes you scan their code and sometimes they scan yours, and those codes live in different places within the apps. This can be confusing at first. Now, we once held up a line for several awkward minutes trying to figure out which code the taxi driver needed. So take a few minutes when you download the apps to learn where both options are located. As foreign travelers, we were able to link our credit cards to the international versions of both Alipay and WeChat Pay. We recommend setting up both apps before you arrive. But here's a pro tip. If you wait to finish setting up your WeChat Pay after you arrive in China, the app unlocks additional local features. If you're traveling with a partner or a friend, install both apps on both phones. If one device has a connection issue or a QR code won't scan properly, the other might work just fine. There were several times we had to try on both phones to complete a payment. Bottom line, these apps are a non-negotiable part of independent travel in China. Download them, set them up, and practice using them before you go. You'll save time, stress, and confusion once you hit the ground. Language is another one of the top concerns for many travelers to China, but in our experience, it was surprisingly manageable. While English isn't widely spoken, translation apps like Google Translate or built-in WeChat Translator worked beautifully for us. And it's not just foreigners using them. Locals were quick to pull out their phones and assist with translations too. Everyone in China has a smartphone and everyone uses it. Most signage in tourist areas and train stations included English translations, and when we needed help, people were patient, kind, and happy to assist, even if it just meant pointing and smiling. We never felt stranded or confused. Every hotel we stayed in had English-speaking staff at the front desk and in their restaurants, which made things smooth and stress-free. In short, don't let the language barrier hold you back. It's easier than you think. When it comes to where to stay, our advice is simple: go for comfort. On our first trip to China many years ago, we stayed in smaller local hotels hoping for charm and authenticity. What we got were rock-hard beds, spotty service, and communication issues. While the breakfasts were traditional, the overall experience left a lot to be desired. This time, we used Hyatt points and stayed at international hotels, and what a difference. We had beautiful rooms, soft beds, excellent service, and amenities that truly made us feel cared for. Chinese hotels like Hyatt understand hospitality, and they deliver it with polish. Here's something we've learned over time. In Asia, especially China, you can afford to upgrade your hotel experience, and it's worth it. Luxury accommodations cost a fraction of what you'd pay in Europe or in the US, so why not treat yourself? Because we're Hyatt globalists, we were upgraded to some absolutely stunning suites. But even without the upgrades, we would have had a fantastic stay. China is one of the few countries where luxury is both accessible and affordable. So if there's ever a time to splurge a little, this is it. Let's talk about breakfast, because in many of China's international hotels, it's a full-blown event. The breakfast buffets we experienced were nothing short of spectacular. We're talking Mother's Day brunch at a luxury hotel every single day. There were local dishes, international selections, made-to-order eggs, soup stations, fresh dumplings, noodle bars, and a fruit spread that put most American hotels to shame. If you enjoy trying new food but also want a few familiar comforts in the morning, these buffets strike the perfect balance. We felt spoiled every day, and it quickly became one of our favorite parts of hotel life in China. So here's one of our more delightful surprises: delivery robots. In many of our hotels, from luxury brands like Hyatt to more modest options, we saw robots being used for room service deliveries. Now, here's how it works. When you order a meal through a food delivery app, think DoorDash, the driver meets the robot in the lobby, places your food inside, and then the robot takes it from there. It rolls into the elevator, travels up to your floor, and delivers your food directly to your room. No human needed. It's efficient, charming, and feels straight out of a sci-fi movie. Now, we never got tired of watching them in action. These robots are just one example of the way China blends technology with everyday hospitality, and they definitely left an impression. When it comes to visiting China's top attractions, especially places like the Forbidden City or the Terracotta Warriors, you'll usually need a timed entry ticket. The best way we found to book these was through the WeChat app. Now, once you're in China, you'll notice that WeChat has a section called Mini Programs, or sometimes WeChat Services. That's where you can find official booking pages for major sites, transportation, and local services. Most attractions will ask for your passport information when booking, and instead of issuing a paper ticket, they just scan your passport when you arrive. That part really streamlined things. The only catch is that many of these services don't show up in the app until you're physically inside of China. So if you're looking from abroad and you can't find anything, don't panic. It'll show up when you land, although you might need to upload the app again. We booked several tickets this way and also bought some on site when things weren't crowded. But if you're traveling during a busy season or on a weekend, it's definitely worth booking a day or two in advance. Hotel staff were always happy to help us with the app, and if we needed assistance navigating the Chinese menus. Now, one helpful discovery: if you're over 60, ask about senior discounts or free admission. At several attractions, we were waved right through with a smile and a passport check. It never hurts to ask. Now, here's something really important. If you plan to visit the Forbidden City in Beijing, book as soon as you arrive in China. It's one of the hardest tickets to get, and when we checked, there were none available. Luckily, we'd been there on a previous trip, so we didn't mind skipping it. But if it's on your list, make it your very first booking. Over the years, we've learned to adjust how and when we book guides, and China really reinforced that lesson. Instead of pre-booking tours online in advance, we found it much more effective to ask our hotels to arrange local guides for us once we arrived. In every case, the guides were professional, knowledgeable, spoke excellent English, and gave us far more value than the more expensive options we'd researched online. In some cases, like our visit to the Terracotta Warriors, you can even hire a guide on site. Of course, many places in China are easy to explore independently, but having a local expert can give you a rich context and help you to get more out of your experience. Now, that said, don't feel like you always need a guide. With a little planning, a good translation app, and access to the subway or Didi, China's ride-hailing app, you can visit most places on your own. For example, we visited the Great Wall just using a combination of subway and high-speed train. It was fast, inexpensive, and easy. Apple Maps gave us step-by-step directions, even showing which platform to stand on. It was one of the best independent excursions that we've ever taken, and we didn't need a guide at all. We use Didi a lot in China. It's their version of Uber, and it works incredibly well, especially when you access it through the WeChat app. We found it super easy to plug in our destination, choose our ride type, and confirm the trip, all within seconds. We often selected the premium ride option, which turned out to be a pleasant surprise. Every time we were picked up in a sleek luxury electric car by a polite, professionally dressed driver who oftentimes offered us bottled water, and the price, a fraction of what we'd pay for something similar back home. Now, if you decide to take a traditional taxi instead, make sure you have your destination written in Chinese. Hotel staff can help with that, and don't expect to pay with cash. Like most things in China, you'll be using your WeChat or Alipay. What really struck us on this trip, though, was how different the driving culture is today compared to our last visit over a decade ago. Back then, driving in China felt wild. It was chaotic, nerve-wracking, and honestly a little bit scary. Well, actually a lot scary. Tour buses swerved between lanes, drivers passed without warning, and we often felt like we were just hanging on for dear life. But this time, it was the opposite. Drivers were calm, careful, and followed the rules. We realized that China's extensive network of traffic cameras has really changed behavior. Most drivers now seem well aware that they're being watched and ticketed automatically. If they sped or drive recklessly, they'd get a ticket. And it shows. And we didn't witness any speeding or aggressive maneuvers. Every ride was smooth, professional, and, dare I say it, kind of enjoyable. It was relaxing. It's a huge shift and one we really appreciated. Let's talk about subways because we use them a lot. Every city's system was slightly different, but overall, they were clean, safe, and incredibly efficient. Ticket machines always had an English option, which made it easy for us to get where we were going without stress. We paid by scanning QR codes through our mobile payment apps, and the whole process was seamless. The trains were punctual, rarely crowded, and the stations were well marked. We never felt unsafe or overwhelmed. In fact, people were incredibly kind. They smiled at us, offered us seats. It made using public transit not just doable, but really enjoyable. As for navigation, we relied almost entirely on Apple Maps. It worked beautifully in China, way better than Google Maps, which is blocked and was very confused. Apple seems to have some sort of agreement with China because it gave us everything we needed, including which subway platform to use. With mobile data and a VPN, we were covered everywhere we went. It made figuring out routes super simple, and we never felt lost. Now, about tipping, it's just not part of the culture. We didn't need to tip at restaurants, hotels, or taxis, and since we were using a mobile payment apps, there usually wasn't even an option to tip. The one exception is private guides. If someone gives you a personal tour or goes above and beyond, you'll definitely want to give them a tip, and we usually send ours through WeChat after the tour ended. One of the best parts of traveling in China was the affordability. Yes, the visa was expensive, but once you're in the country, day-to-day travel is incredibly reasonable. Hotels were often a third of the price of similar places in the US or Europe. Meals were shockingly cheap. We're talking about big, flavorful feast for less than a fast food combo at home. Even premium train tickets and high-end DD rides felt like a deal. The infrastructure is so good that you'll get this 5-star experience at a 3-star price. It's rare to find a place where your money stretches this far while still feeling like you're getting something truly elevated. When it comes to health and hygiene, there are just a few things to keep in mind. Don't drink the tap water. Now, most hotels provide bottled water every day, and it's easy to buy more at the convenience store. Now, as for food, we weren't particularly careful, and we never got sick. Here is one of our big tips. Most restaurants ask about spice level when we ordered, so we could tailor things to our liking. Still, we say at least once, go for the spice. If you overdo it, the dishes are so inexpensive that ordering a second one won't break the bank. Before your trip, we do recommend visiting a travel clinic. We have a whole video about vaccinations, but generally you'll want to be up to date on your regular shots and consider extras like Japanese encephalitis, depending on where you're headed. Now, we tend to take the better safe than sorry approach, especially for longer or more remote adventures. Toilets are something people often ask us about, so here's the scoop. Public restrooms still often have squat toilets, especially in older places. But there's usually at least one Western-style toilet available, often in the handicap stall. Many newer bathrooms, even in parks, were remarkably clean, and even some had heated seats and bidets. Just make sure to carry tissues and hand sanitizer with you, because toilet paper isn't always stocked inside the stalls. Sometimes there's a dispenser near the entrance and sometimes not. But overall, things have come a long way since our last trip, and we were pleasantly surprised. Now, here's something we didn't expect. The shopping scene in China is next level. We saw more luxury brands and high-end retail districts than almost anywhere else in the world. Chinese people are incredibly stylish, children too. It felt like every city had a version of Rodeo Drive. We even looked up some of the big-name fashion brands and discovered that China has more of these storefronts than the US does. As for prices, they weren't cheaper. In fact, many were higher than you'd find in Europe or America. But that didn't stop anyone from shopping. The demand is here, and it's booming. Now, because so much of our journey through China was shaped by train travel, we decided to create a dedicated video just about that. From how to book tickets to understanding seat classes to navigating stations. It's all coming next week. John will walk you through the whole system, so stay tuned. In the meantime, if you haven't already, go back and watch our full travel log series. We worked our way across 9 incredible cities. The whole goal was to show you what independent travel in China actually looks like, step by step, so that you could feel confident doing it yourself. Now, here's the bottom line. China has changed. If your last visit was more than a decade ago, get ready to be amazed. It's cleaner, more modern, more connected, and far more impressive than we expected. From the tech to the infrastructure to the hospitality, China has moved to the top of our list for favorite travel destinations. We truly had an unforgettable time, and we actually cannot wait to go back. So stay tuned for next week's train travel as John deep dives through it all. And as always, thanks for coming along with us. We'll see you next week.